So please, Stephanie, join me on the stage over here. And Stephanie helps female founders and women-led companies craft compelling, authentic, and powerful brand stories. And she's going to talk about the three pillars of a great brand story. Stephanie, take it
Hello,
away.
hello. How you doing? Can y'all hear me okay? We're good? All right. Listen, it is such an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Good. Everyone can hear me. I see that. We are going to share this. Give me 1 second. All right. So we're up. All right. So today I'm talking about the three pillars of a great brand story. We're going to talk about how you can use story to drive sales, engagement, and brand loyalty. So today's event, I'm going to teach you the powerful components of a compelling brand story so you can confidently and clearly craft a brand message for your company that helps you stand out in a sea of online sameness. As you all know, digital marketing is busier than ever. Everyone is attempting to get a piece of the pie online. And so this will really help you stand out and above the crowd when you're sharing your message across all channels. But first, who am I? My name is Stephanie Jiroch, as Pete said. I'm a doctoral student in media psychology, so I study the effects of brand messaging on consumers' desire to buy. So I look at mostly qualitative and some quantitative research around brand narratives, and then how those brand narratives translate across channels and how users take that story and then make it their own and then create some sort of loyalty or desire to be part of the brand narrative, and then how that translates into buying power. I am the founder of Brand Psyche Strategies. We are a boutique marketing firm that is dedicated to brand storytelling, primarily for startups in the seed to early stage rounds of funding. I do work with female founders as well as minority owned companies. So we lead a really fun team to build out really fun stories to help clients get more money from investors as well as customer acquisition, and then later on to hire top talent through their internal story. I am an expat. I am American, but I have lived in 5 countries in the last 7 years, working across Asia, Southeast Asia, as well as the EU. And I'm a mom of 2 awesome little girls. I'm Peloton obsessed. Some of you might have seen the Peloton behind me, and I love flat whites. So if there's any way to my heart, it really is through my flat white addiction. Coffee is the happiness of my soul. I've had the pleasure of working with some really cool purpose-driven brands. Own Network, we did a lot of qualitative research for the stories that were related to their television programming. So we looked at the narratives that were happening across some of their TV shows and then translated that to how well the viewer actually enjoyed and took part in the story. Gabby Bernstein, Chris Carr, some really amazing authors. Girls Inc., we work with a lot of nonprofits on a special discounted rate to help them tell better stories, to increase donor participation especially. We've worked with a lot of really great startups. Impact Hub in Singapore, I was a guest speaker and ongoing consultant for them with their startups and their companies as they were building out some of their tech and biotech divisions of startups back in the day. So some amazing, phenomenal people who use stories. So what's really cool about everyone here is while there is a leading, I guess, characteristic that a lot of them are female-based, all of them are in different industries and they all can use story really well. I love this. So if people love a brand story, it's shown that they are 55% more likely to buy that product being sold in the future. They're 44% more likely to share that story with others. And they're 15% more likely to purchase immediately on the spot. This was research done by Headstream just a few years ago. So it really shows how strong the brand story has effect in a consumer's desire to buy, as well as their loyalty. One of the things that most brands, and if you're, in a company, if you're running a company in marketing or a C-suite, you want people talking about you in a positive way and sharing your story with others. That's how stories spread. That's how consumer loyalty spreads. And that's how you, quote unquote, go viral. And so sharing the story is a really key component aside from buying. So a successful brand story does 4 important things. It helps you stand out in a sea of online sameness, which I mentioned prior. It aligns your business with a greater mission or value system. More people are shown to align with brands that have a strong mission or value system than ever before. It connects you to like-minded dream clients. So telling the right story actually attracts the right people into your sphere of influence, as I call it. And so when you have those dream clients in your sphere of influence, they're buying more, they're talking about you more, that you're building brand loyalty. These are all very important factors. And it creates a memorable brand experience, increases brand loyalty, and of course, drives sales. So I kind of put in a couple extra on that fourth one, but I think they all count. Before I dive into the 3 pillars, I want to talk a little bit about the psychology and science behind story. I know we have a phenomenal individual speaking later in the day who will be touching base on kind of the neuroscience of story. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the psychology of story. So humans are wired for story. This is what makes story so phenomenal, is that in the most basic form, we think in cause and effect, and stories are built in cause and effect. We've used stories for literally thousands of years to convey very important information. And marketers understand this. For the last, I would say, 6 to 7 decades, we've built up as marketers an ability to tell really great stories because that's how humans think, that's how we feel. Everything happens from the psychology of what we hear and what we perceive. The reason we use narratives to convey important information is because we want to understand how we collectively come into this chaotic world. You know, from a psychological aspect, there's a lot going on that we don't understand. So our brains categorize or characterize things. We use archetypes to understand simple characteristics or personas. We want to label things and put them in the right box. This is how our brain works. So when we're told a story and when we're given a formula for that story, we better understand what it is we're perceiving and how it fits into our worldview. This is important also for when we're telling stories. Research has found that certain parts of our brain fire when a story is being told to us as if we were experiencing it in real life. So if we're really super into like a movie, let's say, and we're in it and we're watching it and we're listening and we feel like we're experiencing it, our brain actually drops the same neurotransmitters, it drops the same hormones, and then our parts of our brain fire as if we're experiencing it in real time. That tells you it's a great story. So if you live in America, you probably know these 2 advertisements. This is a great example. On the left of my screen, I've got Sally, you know, the poor puppy who was left outside in the cold to die, and, you know, nobody loves her. And for just $19 a month, whatever you can afford, you can save Sally because Sally needs you. Sally wasn't loved, but Sally will be loved. She'll be nursed back to health. She'll find a home. She'll run through the green valleys, and Sally will be alive because of your $19. That's a great example of a brand story, a little over the top, but a great example of using story. Then you've got the Salvation Army. For many people, every Christmas, they know that the Salvation Army stands outside with the red tin, and you put money in it, and they ring the bell, and that is a holiday tradition. But not many people know the story behind why they do that. So we know that it happens. It's a habit by the company that does this thing every year. They know the story most likely, but the story's gotten lost in translation over the years. They don't drive with story. They drive with the habit. I think these are 2 great examples because the Sally on the left, you don't need to go over the top with this sob story by any means, but Sally's story pulls at your heartstrings a lot more. In fact, so much for me that I have to turn off Sally ads, right? When they come on and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even see it, right? Because I know that my heart is like, oh, it's cracking open, poor Sally the puppy. But then you've got the Salvation Army where I know I'll give a couple cents, but I don't know what drives the story for them to do that. And I bet they could capitalize on doing that more often. So this is a great example of what are you doing in the business that maybe is a habit that story could influence further? And maybe where are you using story to the point where it's a little oversaturated and you can pull back a little bit to have it more effective as well? So let's dive into the teaching element of this particular event. So today I'm going to talk about the 3 elements or pillars of a great brand story. I use these with my clients as a foundational basis. Whenever we're building out a brand story, or what is I like to call a, just basically a brand positioning statement, we look at these 3 elements first to develop a foundation, and then we build upon that story using different strategies and tactics as we go. So I want to introduce you to the big 3. It's theme, characters, and conflict. Okay, these are super important. If there's nothing else that you get from my time with you today, remember the theme, the characters, and the conflict. Theme. I want you to ask yourself, what's the one central theme or moral statement that works throughout your business? Oftentimes, most individuals, most companies who come to me, whether it's a group of co-founders or, someone who's building something on their own, want to be something to everyone. They dilute the story so much because they're afraid of losing out on a piece of the market. Worse, I've worked with companies with massive budgets, but unfortunately, they have so many departments who want to tell an individual story that they try to tell stories across all departments, across all co-founders. And again, they're diluting the story. They're getting off track. One of the things that you'll probably remember about watching a really bad movie or reading a really bad book is that there wasn't one central theme. Maybe you went to watch a romance movie and they also tried to be a thriller and, and a funny movie and romance at the same time. Maybe there wasn't that one central theme that pulled it all together. This is a common mistake I see with big and small clients. 2 great examples of companies that do this really well is Nike and Apple. Nike's entire theme is to believe and empower and inspire yourself to be great. There is nothing else around their theme. They don't try to be romantic. They don't try to be, sometimes they try to be funny, but they don't try to really be funny. They try to inspire and empower. That is their goal. They know you're not going to be the next Serena Williams. You might be. I don't know. There's always that odd chance. But they know for the most part, their consumers are not going to be the next Serena. They're not going to be the next Bolt. But what they do know is you can beat your next best record time, your next best record game with their products. And that's how they position them, right? So they have one theme, and that's to make sure you believe in yourself enough to achieve your version of greatness. Then you have Apple. Apple's always been great. I would say in the last 5 years, they've deviated a little bit from their theme, but in the beginning, they were the rebel. They were the creative. When they did I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, epic campaign, but they lived inside the theme of we're different and we like to be different. When the first commercial came out for Apple and the woman came busting through the screen in a very 1984 way where everyone was kind of droned in and she really came through to say, hey, we're here to cause a ruckus. Apple has kept that the whole time. Apple's the funny, quirky, nerdy, creative person. And they inspire all of their products to make you feel like you're special in that way. That's the whole point of Apple's brand messaging theme. They want you to be the creative, quirky one on their Mac, or back when they used to have, iPods and things like that. I miss my iPod. So these are 2 great examples of companies that use themes really, really well across all channels. Characters. So this is the second element. Contrary to popular belief, you are not the hero of your brand story. Your customer is, which makes your business the sidekick, the entity that helps, guides, supports, and inspires. I often get some pushback on this from clients because who else is telling their story but them, which is true. You want to be able to tell your company's story, or if you're running a personal brand, you want to be able to tell that story effectively because, of course, you're the center of it, but you want to position yourself as the helper. Because guess what? If I'm buying whatever you're selling, I'm the hero of my story. I am the only one that matters. So if I'm going to go buy Nike shoes because I'm running a 5K and I'm running that 5K for cancer support and I need to fundraise because I know someone who died of cancer, and so I'm running this thing, and so there's this long journey to get me to the shoes that'll help me get to the point where I can reach my goal in the 5K or just finish it. That has nothing to do with Nike. It has everything to do with me. Nike's helping me reach my goal. The problem I see is that people don't know how to shift gears that way. That doesn't mean you can't talk about yourself. That doesn't mean you can't share your benefits, share about the team, really give people a sense of who you are, because the more you do that, the more they trust you. But if you start to only talk about yourself, then it doesn't work. A great example of this not working is the Pepsi ad from 2017 with one of the Jenner daughters. And it just blew up. They attempted to position themselves as a brand that was in the know, and they had this superstar at the time who was walking out handing out Pepsi during these protests. And at the time, Black Lives Matter was this huge cultural awakening for the United States, and so there was a lot going on, and they blew it. They blew it because they were putting themselves as the hero. Now, while they didn't see that, they saw themselves as bridging the gap between what was happening culturally with the current generation. What the people saw was that they were attempting to control the narrative, to position themselves in the narrative in a way that took away from the substance of what was happening on the activist side. So this was a great example of what not to do when you are attempting to make yourself the hero. You want to make yourself the sidekick. And finally, the third element is conflict. The driving force of any great brand story is conflict. So ask yourself, what force, organization, policy, or outdated system is your brand up against? Again, I get some pushback on this because conflict sounds like, well, we're bringing up drama, we're really pushing buttons. Not at all. But one of the things that conflict does in any great story, book, movie, brand story, is it shows individuals that the brand, the story, the characters are human. It creates a sense of empathy. So if I go to your website and you're telling me all the great things about your widget or your calendar, software, that's great. I need those things. I need to know the benefits. But if you're not addressing my pain points, I'm not really sure if you understand me. So if you're listing, hey, we get it. We know what it's like when you've got 100 different appointments going on. Everyone's in lockdown. It's a Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. Let's organize your calendar. Let's make it streamlined. You wake up, you feel refreshed. You know what's in your day. You're not forgetting meetings. You're not running around hectic, right? That's speaking to the conflict of what's going on in the consumer's life. Conflict doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be taking on the world level. It could be a micro conflict. You could see that your customer has issues with the right fitting shoes or glasses or affordable health care. I mean, there's a lot of things you could pick as their conflict. But once you know the conflict, you can take a stand against it. A really great company that does this is Patagonia. They're in the business to save the home planet. Now, Patagonia has a really big conflict. They are up against anyone who's out to destroy the planet. That's huge. But if you're into saving the planet, I bet Patagonia speaks to you. I bet you're going to buy from them. You might even take some of their trips. You might have even gone to Patagonia. I mean, some of their most avid, loyal customers really kind of live inside the Patagonia brand. Another brand that does this really well is Ben & Jerry's. They take on a lot of conflict. They take on democracy, saving the planet, refugees, sex trafficking. I mean, if you go to their About Us, About What We Believe in page, there are probably about 10 different things that they take on, but they take it on in a really fun way. They make new ice creams with fun names. They, poke fun of celebrities or individuals who are out there doing something that they don't agree with. They take a stand in a way that gets people to notice them. And then when you kind of divert your attention back to Ben & Jerry's, you might not love Ben & Jerry's. You might go for Haagen-Dazs. That might not be your brand, but they do it in a very specific way that meets the needs of their customers. So I want you to consider, in what ways could you say, well, we've got this conflict. Our customers have this conflict. In what ways can we share those pain points in a way that shows that we understand them, that we get them, that we have been there, and we're going to make it better for them? So a couple different takeaways. Don't dilute the story. Don't try to be everything to everyone. You are not the hero. Your client is. In order to stand out, you must stand for something This is essential. So this goes back to the conflict. And finally, stories build emotional connections and drive empathy, which leads to brand loyalty and increased sales. Questions? And really quick before I jump in, I do have a brand story workbook that we can that you can grab. So here's the link for that. I think that this will be sent out to everyone, of course, too. So there is a brand story workbook that you guys can grab that you can work through a lot of this completely for free, and you can work through kind of your own brand story framework to get you started on this. So cool.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, we have a few. I'll start with one of my own.
Yeah,
so
cool.
if we look at some of these companies, let's say Hinge, it's the dating app. So they're up against, Bumble and so on. And so when they were working on their brand a couple of years ago, they came up with this new direction that our brand is about forming permanent connections. And the story is like, get off the dating scene, like delete the dating app. That's their messaging. But then they realized that their app is still swiping left and right. So they're not actually, the product is not aligned with the story. And so story became the strategy, and they redid the app to match the story. Do you know of other examples where the story became the strategy and started actually leading product development?
Yeah, well, and I can say this on a high level because one of the clients who work for Own Network, traditionally in television programming, they created stories, they tested it. If the audience responded, it worked. Television ratings went up, they kept the program on, right? At Own, they did it a little differently. So they created a story, they tested the story with the market, and then how that story affected the customer, and then the viewer, I should say, and how that viewer then used the story. They threw it back onto the show and incorporated it into the show. So in a way, the story became the strategy for the television shows that we were studying over the last year. So the stories actually evolved based on the viewer, not because the writer felt that script was key. They actually shifted it and made the viewer, unknown to them because they were in focus groups, of course, became how the stories evolve on screen. So that was a really cool way that Own has started to use stories in a very different way in the programming model.
Cool. All right, let's get into audience questions here. Sure. We have a lot. One question is that what if I am in the business of expertise? I need to be the authority.
Sure.
And so how do you make the customer the hero if I want to say that I'm the guru?
Oh, yeah, sure. Great question. So we've worked with personal brands in the past. So whatever you're the expert in, there must be something that is a problem for the customer. So I don't know what that expertise is, right? But let's say you're an expertise in eating healthy. I'm just going to use it as an example. And you're the expert and you need to sell yourself and sell the plan on eating healthy. But you need to address the pain points of the customer and let the customer know that their journey to weight loss or feeling better in their clothes or whatever that pain point is that drives them to lose weight is achievable with you guiding them with your plan. Now, you can toot your own horn and say where you've been published and who you work with. Those are all very important factors in the persuasion model because people want to know, are you an authority? Do you know what you're talking about? Those factors don't go away. But if you become, my way is the only way and you won't lose weight unless you choose me, that's where the narrative shifts from hero to sidekick. But if you say, hey, I get it. Like you want to look good in your kids' graduation photos and you want to lose the 20 pounds you put on after 30 years or whatever it is. And here's how I can support you and help you. Here's what I've done with other clients. And then you bring in client testimonials, right? You use their stories on top of your story. And then that also shows authority and expertise to build out this model to show individuals that, yes, I know what I'm talking about, but it's really to help you in the long run. And you position it that way.
Excellent. Katie is saying that I have a problem with the difference between theme and conflict. She's saying she understands what the conflict is, but can you elaborate on the difference here?
Okay, so she needs to know what theme is more than conflict. Okay, great. So conflict would be pain points. So she gets that. Theme would be, what is the thing that you do best. So for example, Nike empowers, inspires. That's what they do. That's their theme. The pain points might be you're tired, you don't want to run today, but you get up anyways, you put on the shoes and you beat your best time, right? So that's how that would kind of land differently. If you look at my brand is to empower people to get more money in the female founder space. I want them to feel empowered so they can make more money, whether it's from investors or the customer side. But the pain points are that, hey, we don't have enough customers. We don't have enough investors, right? So I'm meeting them at their pain point, but my theme is to always feel or help them feel that they are capable of doing what they need to do to get the money. I don't know if that speaks directly to it, but those are some quality examples.
Awesome. Last question is from Mark here. So how much of a role should a villain, the enemy, play in your story?
Love a good villain. Thank you for bringing that up. It plays a big role. Villain and conflict to me can go hand in hand a lot of times. So they can be used almost interchangeably. The villain is the thing that you really are up against, right? So for my villain in my company is kind of the megaphone marketing style. I call it megaphone marketing because it's the me, look at me, focus on me marketing. I don't believe in that. I believe in a different type of marketing, right? And so I talk a lot about that in my work. And I talk a lot about empathy and empathy maps and those types of things. That is my villain. Similar to the conflict in that a lot of people are having trouble getting customers. The villain for me is don't go a marketing route that attempts to shove you in the face of your potential customers. Meet them where they need you to be with the story. So that's how I position my product and services differently. So the villain is an essential component to position the story to say, hey, the villain might be the bad guy down the street who doesn't believe in quality health, or McDonald's or whatever, I mean, if you're like a health person. So there are a lot of different ways the villain can show up that meet the conflict to help you tell the story better.
Wonderful. There are more questions, unfortunately, out of time. I'm dropping Stephanie's LinkedIn URL in the chat here. You can connect with her, guys, and send her a direct message or whatever you want. So thank you again, Stephanie.
Awesome.
We'll
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
later.
Yep. Have a good one.